you know that extra layer of fat that you can pinch around your belly? Well, that's subcutaneous fat. It's a surface level of fat you don't necessarily have to worry about. But underneath that is visceral fat, and it's known as the most dangerous type of fat that's on your body because it resides around your most important organs. So in today's video, I want to show you why we accumulate visceral fat, how you can know how much visceral fat that you have on your body, and also a simple protocol that we use to help one of our clients drop 50% of visceral fat from his body in only 4 months. And by the way, my name is Dan Go, and I've been a fitness coach for the past 20 years, and I help high-achieving entrepreneurs transform their bodies with ease and minimal stress. So why do we accumulate visceral fat in the first place? Well, a big part of that is due to lifestyle. Binging on junk food, skimping out on your exercise, getting crappy sleep, being too stressed out, and drinking way too much booze all contribute to the accumulation of visceral fat over the years. And genetics also plays a very sneaky role in the accumulation of visceral fat, making it easier for some to collect it than others. But what you need to know is that genetics is the gun and the environment is the trigger. So you can't necessarily fix one, but you can definitely fix the other. Well, you may be wondering, like, how much visceral fat is too much? Well, ideally, we want to get as close to 0 pounds as possible of visceral fat on our bodies. Now, the best way to figure out how much visceral fat you have on your body is through getting either a CT scan or an MRI scan or even a DEXA scan. But for a lot of people, that may not be accessible. So here are some other ways that you can find out how much visceral fat that you have on your body. Now, the first one is the waistline test. So if you're a guy watching this video, anything at or above 40 inches for your waistline is definitely a good sign that you have a lot of visceral fat on your body. And if you're a woman that is watching this video, anything above 35 inches is also a good indicator that you have way too much visceral fat. Now, there's another method that health experts suggest, which is your waist to height ratio. The recommendation is that your waist should measure out to be half your height when it comes to inches or even centimeters. So let's just say that you're a 70-inch man, which is around 5'10", then your waistline should be around 35 inches, if not lower than that. And the final way to measure your visceral fat is to use a visceral fat calculator. And this is provided by the University of Luxembourg. I'm going to be linking it in the description below. And basically you enter in your numbers and then it calculates exactly how much visceral fat you have in your body. Now, again, that is going to be an estimation. It's based off of a formula. It doesn't mean that is exactly how much you have, but it will give you a good indicator of whether or not you are accumulating more than you should. Now, you may be wondering what the dangers are to having too much visceral fat on your body. Now, visceral fat is not just content to just sit there. It wreaks havoc on your hormones and also sends out inflammatory signals to your entire body. This type of fat can wrap around your most important organs like your liver, your pancreas, and your intestines. It not only messes with your hormones, it also raises your blood pressure. It also makes you more insulin resistant. And then this can set you up for a bevy of preventable diseases, such as heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and certain types of cancer. So again, like, visceral fat is literally the most dangerous type of fat that is on your body, and we want to do everything that we can to get rid of it. So how do we do this? Well, I recently took a client through a 4-month program and we did a DEXA scan for him. And when the DEXA scan came back, we realized that he had around 2.5 pounds of visceral fat on his body. And in 4 months, we were able to reduce his visceral fat by 50%. And here's the protocol that we use to do it. The very first one is just to eat smart. We changed his diet from one that was eating out, that was getting Uber Eats all the time, and that was just like generally just irresponsible, and we turned it into one where he was doing a couple of things. So number one, we traded all of the foods that he was eating for single ingredient, nutrient dense, high protein types of foods. You're getting around like 40 to 50 grams of protein per meal. And there's a very specific reason why we did this. It's because when you're losing weight, you don't just want to lose weight. There is this chance that you might lose muscle. And when it comes to losing weight, we want to be able to retain, if not build maybe a little bit of muscle while you are dropping fat. So with our client, each morning we had him start off his day with a high protein meal. It was either Greek yogurt, berries with like protein powder and also a couple of nuts, or it could have been eggs and also a combination of Greek yogurt. If he was too busy, we would still have him start off his day with at least a shake, just to make sure that we have protein going into his body. And initially what we did was we tracked his foods. We tracked all the calories he was putting into his body. We tracked all the macros he was putting into his body. And we wanted to get really clear about how much he was eating and how much protein he was putting in as well. And not only did this help him lose the visceral fat, but it also helped him drop 40 pounds off of his body just by switching up what he was eating. Now, number 2 was fixing how he was exercising and how he was moving. And the combination of weightlifting and also low intensity movement is like the perfect combination if you want to get rid of weight, especially when it comes to visceral fat. So here's what we did for our client. The first thing is that he had no problem exercising. He was actually doing it 7 days a week, which is surprising because he was carrying so much fat on his body. But this is what happens when you don't necessarily pair up a proper exercise routine and also with proper dieting. So he was changing his workouts every single day, and we got him to stop doing that. We had him doing a 16-week program where he was focused on getting stronger at the basic movements. Things like the squat, the lunge, the chest press, the horizontal back row, the vertical pull-up. Basically, we just had him doing the same exercises and with a focus on progressively overloading the exercises so he could get stronger and build more muscle. And the thing that we did with his cardio was very specific. We made sure that he was getting at least 8,000 to 10,000 steps per day. He had no problems doing zone 2 cardio, but we don't necessarily look at that as a way to burn fat. We do that as a way for mental health and also physical health and VO2 max. Now, one of the best ways to lose visceral fat, especially with cardio, is to do high intensity interval training. But we did not do that with our client because we had to manage the amount of stress that he was incurring on a daily basis. So one of the things that we did was we just swapped out any kind of like high intensity cardio with walking because we wanted to make sure that we were limiting the amount of stress he was putting on his body. Now, this leads me to number 3, which is to chill the fuck out. And what I mean by that is that stress is like a fat magnet, but it doesn't really accumulate fat in the way that most people think. What stress does is it increases appetite, it makes people a little bit more emotional, it makes people more reactive, especially to the way that they eat. And it has been shown to maybe accumulate a little bit more belly fat than usual. So this leads me to the reason why we use low intensity cardio as a way to manage his stress. So my client runs one of the biggest hedge funds in America. And one of the things that he incurs is a lot of stress. So one thing that we did was to mitigate this stress through timing. So when it comes to his meals, he was fasting every single day up until like 12 to 1 p.m. And he said like, okay, like this works for me. But what he didn't realize is that fasting in the early part of the day, especially with all the stress he was incurring, it led to uncontrollable bouts of eating at night. So we switched up his fasting. Instead of continuing his fast in the morning, we had him start his fast early with his final meal of the day. And I call this concept eating to your circadian rhythm. And I find that this concept works a lot, especially for people who run high stress jobs. After switching him up from skipping breakfast to eating breakfast, he actually started to report that he was more fuller by the time he got to the end of the night. So another part to timing is to time when he exercises. So with our client, we made sure that he was getting his workouts first thing in the morning. That was something that he was already doing. It was great. And the next thing that we did was in the mid-afternoon, especially like right before the time he was about to go back home, we had him go and take a walk. We had him go and just de-stress himself by putting his phone away, taking a walk outside just for about 15 to 30 minutes. And then what we don't realize is that a lot of times when we go from our work back to home, we take that stress with us, especially when we have kids jumping all over us. By just having that little 15 to 30 minute buffer to give yourself that mental health space, it does allow you to approach the rest of your day and the end of your day with a lot more calm and a lot more ease. And something that we know about walking in general is the fact that it helps you de-stress. It's one of the best ways to manage your stress levels. Now, we did also talk about stress with our client as well, because a lot of stress comes from the perception of stress rather than what is actually happening. Now, that is a longer topic for another video, and I'll get into that in another video in the future. Now, the fourth thing that we did was have him eliminate alcohol completely. So when you're trying to lose visceral fat, you need to set up an environment that makes it conducive to happen. Now, alcohol is literally taking in empty calories with practically zero nutritional or health benefit to it. And it also increases the amount of stress that you would experience after all the alcohol has just weaned off. And the worst thing about alcohol that most people don't mention is the fact that it increases appetite. It has a chance to make you more ravenous than smoking a doobie with your friends. Now, one of the things that my client was doing was that he was having alcohol on a regular basis, and he still wanted to have like 1 to 2 drinks a week with his wife. So I said, okay, cool, like I'll compromise with you. We're gonna have 1 to 2 drinks a week with your wife, totally cool. But what happened was he felt so good by not drinking alcohol. He was more focused, he was more energetic, he was waking up without any brain fog. He was just a better version of himself that he decided to just get rid of it completely for the 4 months that we were working together. And getting rid of the booze went a long way in dropping his visceral fat by 50%. Now, the last thing that we did was to have him sleep like a high performer. Now, something that I have to understand about poor sleep is the fact that it increases your hunger hormones, and it also messes with your appetite hormone leptin, which is supposed to be a signal to tell you when you've had enough to eat. And lack of sleep also increases the stress and also the amount of cortisol that you're inviting into your body. And to me, sleep is the #1 performance enhancing drug on the planet, and it's also the biggest curse if you're not getting enough of it. Now, admittedly, with our client, we couldn't change everything that we needed to change, especially when it comes to sleep. There's just something about people who are achieving at the highest level in business who don't necessarily prioritize sleep. But the things that we did do was increase the quality of his sleep. I did talk a lot about this on the video that you can check out right over here, but the first thing that we did was we fixed his environment so it was completely dark. We had him sleeping at the right temperature, and he also got a mattress for himself that was able to cool his side of the bed. And that went a long way to improving the quality of his sleep. The other thing that we did with our client was have him track his sleep using a sleep tracker, because you can make all these changes to your sleep, but you don't know which one is actually working unless you quantify it. Now, when it comes to sleep trackers, I don't necessarily recommend using it for the rest of your life, but I do say that you want to use it for about 6 months, maybe even to a year, to find out what things affect your sleep. Because if there's anything I know about sleep, is that it gives you instant biofeedback based on the stuff that you do the night before. So while our client wasn't necessarily getting the hours of sleep that he needed, he definitely increased the quality of his sleep by at least 10% using some of the tips that I just talked about. Now, something I tell all of my clients is that you don't need a six-pack. You don't need to look like any of these juiced up influencers that are on Instagram or social media. You don't need to compare yourself or even have the bodies of these guys whatsoever. You just need to get your body fat down to a level where it is going to be avoidant of preventable disease. And a big part of that is eliminating as much visceral fat from your body as possible. While my client has made significant strides and has dropped 50% of visceral fat from his body, we still have work to do. This is still a long-term thing. So if you made it to the end of this video and you're still looking to get in shape, I actually did a video right up here that shows you how to drop the first 20 pounds off your body, and you can go right over there and you can check it out. And I'll see you on the next one.